Hi, I'm Ryan McDonough from Wake Up with Wolf, and I'm here with City Councilman of Ann Arbor, Zachary Ackerman, sworn in on this past Thursday for the 3rd Ward. Zachary, thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk voter turnout. So you won 90% of the vote, but from my understanding, it was less than for certain districts, there's less than 1% of voters turned out for certain wards.
Yeah, voter turnout in these odd year elections is astonishingly low, and kind of disgracefully so. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that most people don't think of odd years as election years, as election cycles. I think there's a lot that can be done just by eliminating this odd year cycle. I'd be happy to dive into that if you want.
Yeah, I think kind of going off that, I think last time we talked about how a lot of students aren't here and aren't aware of a lot of the election. How can we change that? Because I feel like, you put yourself out there. So how do we get more students to actually go out and vote?
Sure. So a lot of that has to do with the fact that this is a very blue city. It's a democratic city. So generally the deciding vote happens in August, when only about 10% of the student body is enrolled in classes. That means that student turnout in relevant student precincts is usually in the single digits, which is sad. That said, I think there is a critical balance that needs to be struck, and I do believe in partisan elections. I believe that a party identifier is an important voting tool for the voter. What I propose instead is switching council terms to 4 years instead of the 2 currently, and then going on alternating even years. So one council member would be elected in 2012, the other council member for the ward would be elected in 2014, and each would serve 4 years, gives them institutional knowledge, and means they're not constantly running for re-election.
And speaking of ideas you have your first meeting this Monday, if I understand correctly. So you ran on a lot of issues. What issues are your priority right away now that you're in office?
Sure. So a lot of that got skewed, and my priorities still remain my priorities long term. But the city has kind of reached a leadership vacuum. We have 5 of the most senior level members of our staff, all kind of retiring or resigning, all in the same 8 months. And that's kind of a scary place to be organizationally. So we got to make sure that we fill those positions with tremendous people who can develop that organizational strength once again.
And actually, so you mentioned, even though you believe in party lines, you do also believe in collaboration, from my understanding. So I have already, since you've been now officially elected for almost a week now, a little more, have reached out to anyone? Has anyone reached out to you to collaborate?
Sure, yeah, that's where it gets a little bit murky. So like I said, it's a blue city, it's a democratic city. There are 11 members of council, 10 of those members are Democrats. But there are different brands of Democrats, different kinds of Democrats. 90% of the issues that come to the council table will be voted yay unanimously. It's that 10% that gets controversial. And yeah, I've reached out, and I think I'm hoping to have a productive relationship with the members I might not agree with on all those 10%. I beat one of their friends, but I think we're all adults and we're all working towards the same goal, which is a more fiscally healthy, more economically healthy, more environmentally healthy Ann Arbor.
So this week, there's been a lot in the news and just going around on campus even with issues of diversity, racial discrimination, things like that, especially at Yale, University of Missouri. So I know you're obviously you're city councilman of Ann Arbor. You don't work for the university, but what can you do to kind of help that, or how can students what do you think students can do to kind of deal with those kind of issues?
No, it's a timely question without a doubt. And I want to be an ally of those fighting the injustices of the world, but also with the understanding that there's not much I can do to influence the University of Michigan. I think there is an endemic problem of institutional and incidental racism in our education system across the country. One example is here at the University of Michigan, the African American population is 5% of the student body in a state where the African American population is 14% of the total population. That's an alarming difference. And we face similar things at the city. 8% of Ann Arbor's population is African American compared to the 14% of the state. And there are things that we can do to mitigate that. But it extends from there. I had a really interesting conversation with a friend from South Texas, actually just yesterday. And I had no idea that there was this huge Hispanic civil rights movement that exactly mirrored in timeline the African American civil rights movement of the 1960s and 70s. and it's not something that's written about in textbooks. Even in my Ann Arbor Public Schools, the progressive and liberal place that this is. And it's astonishing that how pervasive from every level of education, these kind of exclusions and incidental missteps that truly affect the way that we see the world and think about people.
Do you think, kind of right now the focus is on the university level, but do you think, I mean, this is obviously part of a greater issue probably in society and communities. Even within our community, do you have any, not advice, but do you see it in your day-to-day life, and how do you think people, just everyday people, can kind of change it?
How can everyday people change it? Be a more considerate person, I guess. How can the community change it? I think right now we have an over-reliance on using our neighbor Ypsilanti 10 miles away as our affordable housing option. I don't think that that's fair, and I think it causes us to become an increasingly less diverse and inclusive community. I think I ran on a platform that emphasized affordability in the city, and I think we need to double down our efforts on making Ann Arbor an affordable place to live.
Great. Well, Zachary, thank you so much for joining. It's always a pleasure to have you on, and hope you'll be back soon. So if you want to hear more from Zach, he writes the Michigan Daily, where I believe, almost once a week, every few weeks?
Every other week.
Every other week, so you can check him out on there. You can check out this interview and more at Wake Up with Wolf on wolftv.com and on our social media pages on Wake Up with Wolf on Facebook or on Twitter. So with that, have a great weekend, and we'll be back soon.